They said I was paranoid, that the 3 a.m. text from my landlord telling me to pack my things and leave immediately was an overreaction. But when my apartment building went up in flames 2 hours later, everyone realized Mr. Phillips wasn't paranoid. He was the only one paying attention. You want to know why I'm standing here alive while my neighbors barely made it out, Captain Mitchell? Everyone thinks this story is about a fire. But that's not where this fire started. The real fire started 3 weeks earlier, when I moved into apartment 2B and didn't notice the 2 men watching from the woods. If you've ever felt like someone was watching you but ignored it, you'll understand this story. Subscribe and comment where you're watching from. My name is Terra, and I'm 26 years old. 3 months ago, I finally got what I'd been saving for since college, my own place. No roommates, no shared walls with loud neighbors, just me and my cat Pepper in a quiet apartment on the edge of town. The building wasn't anything fancy, an old 3-story complex with chipped paint and creaky stairs. But the rent was affordable, and my landlord seemed reliable. His name was Mr. Phillips. He was in his early 60s, stern-looking with salt and pepper hair and the kind of face that didn't smile much. But he fixed things fast and didn't bother me unless something needed attention. He lived across the courtyard in another unit. I'd see him sometimes in the mornings, checking the mail or talking to the maintenance guy. He always nodded when he saw me. Professional. Respectful. The kind of landlord you forget about because everything just works. I worked remotely as a graphic designer, which meant I spent most of my time in my apartment. My setup was simple. Laptop at the kitchen table, coffee always brewing, Pepper curled up on the couch. I'd work late into the night because that's when I felt most productive. The building was quiet then, peaceful. The apartment had big windows that faced the courtyard, and beyond that, a line of trees that bordered the property. During the day, the trees looked harmless, just part of the scenery. At night, though, they turned into shadows, dark, dense shapes that seemed to lean closer when the wind picked up. I should have paid more attention to those trees. About a week after I moved in, I noticed something small. Cigarette butts under my window. 3 of them, lined up neatly on the gravel below. I thought maybe the previous tenant had smoked, or maybe someone from maintenance. I didn't think much of it. A few days later, I found more. 5 this time, fresh ones. I mentioned it to Mr. Phillips when he stopped by to check a leaky faucet. He frowned, walked to the window, and looked down. "I don't allow smoking on the property," he said quietly. "Maybe someone from the building?" I offered. He shook his head. "Nobody here smokes. I'll keep an eye out." He left, and I went back to work. But that night, as I sat at my laptop editing a client's logo, I felt it. That prickle on the back of your neck. The sense that someone's looking at you. I turned toward the window. The blinds were half open. Beyond them, the courtyard was dark, except for a single flickering streetlight. I stared for a long moment, searching the shadows. Nothing. I closed the blinds fully and tried to shake the feeling. "You're being paranoid," I told myself. "You live alone now. It's just an adjustment." But Pepper didn't think so. She sat on the windowsill, ears back, tail twitching. She growled low in her throat, which she never did. "What's wrong, girl?" I whispered. She didn't look at me. She stared at the window like something was on the other side. I grabbed my phone and texted my sister, Nana. "Do you ever get the feeling someone's watching you?" She replied immediately. "Girl, it's 11 p.m. Go to bed." I smiled, but the unease didn't leave. The next morning, Mr. Phillips knocked on my door. He was holding a small clipboard and looked more serious than usual. "Terra, I need to show you something," he said. I followed him down to his office, a cramped room on the first floor filled with filing cabinets and a single desk. On the desk was a laptop, and on the screen was a grainy, black-and-white video feed. "Security camera," he explained. "I installed it last year, after some kids tried breaking into the storage units." The footage showed the parking lot and part of the courtyard. It wasn't great quality, but it was clear enough to see movement. He clicked to a saved clip from 2 nights earlier. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. On the screen, A dark sedan pulled into the far corner of the lot. It sat there for 3 minutes, engine off, lights off. Then 2 figures got out. Men, based on their build. They stood near the tree line, looking up at the building. One of them pointed. The camera angle wasn't good enough to see where, but based on the direction, he was pointing at the 2nd floor. My floor. "They've been here twice," Mr. Phillips said. "Same car, same time. They don't do anything, just watch." My stomach dropped. "Did you call the police?" "I did. They said without an actual crime being committed, there's not much they can do. But I'm watching." He looked at me directly. "You're in 2B, right?" I nodded. "Keep your blinds closed at night," he said, "and if you see anything unusual, you call me first. Then you call 911. I left his office feeling cold. Someone had been watching my apartment at 3 in the morning, for no reason I could understand. That night, I checked every lock twice, closed every blind, kept my phone next to my bed, volume on high. Pepper slept curled against my side, and for the first time since moving in, I didn't feel safe. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of paranoia and second-guessing. Every sound outside my window made me jump. Every shadow in the courtyard looked like a person. I started working with my back to the wall so I could see the door and the windows at the same time. Naina called me one afternoon. "You sound stressed," she said. "I'm fine," I lied. "Terra, you're not fine. What's going on?" I told her everything. The cigarette butts, the security camera footage, the men in the sedan. She went quiet for a long time. "Have you seen them again?" she asked. "No, but I feel like they're still out there." "You need to leave," she said firmly. "Come stay with me for a few days." "I can't just abandon my apartment. I have work. I have Pepper." "Then get a better lock. Get pepper spray. Do something." I promised I would, but I didn't. I just kept living in that low-grade fear, hoping it would go away on its own. It didn't. One night around 1 a.m., I was finishing up a project when I heard it. A faint scraping sound, metal on metal. It was coming from outside. I muted my laptop and listened. The sound stopped. Then started again. It was rhythmic, deliberate. I crept to the window and carefully lifted one slat of the blinds. The courtyard was dark, but near the corner of the building I saw movement. A figure crouched low, doing something near the ground floor window of the vacant unit next to mine. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my phone and texted Mr. Phillips, "Someone's outside the building, near the vacant unit." 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "Stay inside, locking your door, I'm checking it out." I watched through the blind as Mr. Phillips appeared in the courtyard holding a flashlight. The figure near the window straightened up fast and ran toward the trees. Mr. Phillips shouted something, but the person was already gone. He walked over to the window and crouched where the figure had been. Then he pulled out his phone. A minute later, he texted me. "They were trying to pry the window open. I'm calling the police. Don't open your door for anyone but me." I sat on my couch, shaking. Pepper jumped onto my lap and I held her tight, listening to every sound. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through my blinds. The police had arrived. An officer knocked on my door. I checked the peephole first, saw the uniform, and opened it. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Kelly. Your landlord reported suspicious activity. Did you see anything?" I told him what I'd seen. He wrote it down, nodding. "We'll increase patrols in the area," he said. "But without catching them in the act, there's not much we can charge them with. Keep your doors and windows locked." After he left, Mr. Phillips came by. He looked exhausted. "You should think about staying somewhere else for a few days," he said. "Why? What's going on?" He hesitated. "I think they're casing the building, looking for units that are easy to break into. Yours isn't on the first floor, so you're safer. But I don't like how often they're coming back." "Do you think they'll try again?" "I don't know, but I'm not taking chances." He left, and I locked the door behind him. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure crouched by the window. Every time I drifted off, I woke up to Pepper hissing at something I couldn't see. By the time the sun came up, I was exhausted and terrified and convinced I should leave. But I didn't, because leaving felt like giving up, and I'd worked too hard for this place to let some creeps scare me away. That was my first mistake. The night everything changed started like any other. It was a Tuesday. I'd worked late, finishing a logo redesign for a client who couldn't make up their mind. By midnight, I was done. I made myself tea, curled up on the couch with Pepper, and put on a movie. The rain had started around 11, tapping softly against the windows. It was the kind of sound that should have been soothing. It wasn't. I kept glancing at the window, kept listening for sounds that didn't belong, but the building was silent, just the rain and the low hum of the refrigerator. Around 1:30 a.m., I dozed off. The movie was still playing, casting a soft blue glow across the room. Pepper was asleep next to me, her little body warm against my side. Then my phone buzzed. I jerked awake, heart already racing. The screen was too bright in the dark room. I squinted at it. A text from Mr. Phillips. "Pack your things and leave now. Don't ask questions." I read it twice, not understanding. My brain was foggy from sleep, trying to make sense of the words. "Pack your things? Leave now?" I texted back. "Mr. Phillips, what's going on? Is everything okay?" The reply came instantly. "I'm serious, Terra. Leave now. You'll thank me by morning." That second message sent ice through my veins. Something in the tone, the urgency. I sat up, fully awake now. Pepper stirred, sensing my panic. I checked the clock. 3:02 a.m. The rain had stopped. The building was completely silent. I looked around my apartment. Everything looked normal. No smoke, no strange smells, no alarms going off. I checked the stove, unplugged. The outlets, fine. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, dark. I called Mr. Phillips. It went straight to voicemail. I called again, same thing. My hands were shaking now. I texted him. "I'm not leaving in the middle of the night unless you tell me why." No reply. That's when Pepper jumped off the couch, her tail puffed up like a bottle brush. She started hissing toward the living room window. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly. The blinds were closed, but through the narrow gap at the bottom, I could see the faint glow of the streetlight. And something else. Movement. A shadow crossing the courtyard. I froze, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor, maybe an animal. But then Pepper bolted down the hallway and hid under the bed, and I knew. Something was wrong. I grabbed my phone again and called Nana. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Why are you calling me at 3 a.m?" she mumbled. "Nana, something's happening," I whispered. "Mr. Phillips texted me to leave, right now, but he won't tell me why, and I think someone's outside." She woke up fast. "Terra, listen to me. You need to leave, right now. Don't wait." "But I don't even know where I'd go, and all my stuff." "Terra," she said firmly, "if your landlord is telling you to leave, there's a reason. Please, just get in your car and drive to my place." I wanted to, but I couldn't move. Fear had locked my legs in place. "Just keep your phone on," I whispered. "I'm going to check the hallway." "No, don't." I hung up before she could finish. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole again. Still empty. But as I stood there, I heard it. A sound from outside my door, slow, dragging, like something heavy being pushed across the floor. It stopped, then started again. My breath caught in my throat. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. Then came a soft thump against the door, not a knock, more like someone leaning against it, pressing their weight into the wood. And then, a whisper. "Terra." A man's voice, low, calm, deliberate. "Terra, open up." Every muscle in my body locked. I didn't recognize the voice. It didn't sound like Mr. Phillips. It didn't sound like anyone I knew. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The voice came again. "I know you're awake." My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. A text from an unknown number. "Don't look outside again." My blood went cold. That message came seconds after I'd looked through the blinds earlier, which meant someone had been watching me, in real time. Another text came through, this time from Mr. Phillips. "Do not open the door. Don't speak. Stay quiet. Police are on the way. I called them when I saw the men on my camera. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. The doorknob twisted, slowly, testing the lock. I backed into the hallway, clutching my phone like it could protect me. My whole body was shaking. The doorknob stopped moving. Footsteps moved away, slow, deliberate, fading down the hall. I ran into the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it. I shoved my dresser in front of it with strength I didn't know I had. Pepper was under the bed, eyes wide, ears flat. I crawled in next to her and texted Nana. "He's trying to get in. Police are coming." She replied immediately. "I'm on my way. 15 minutes. Do not open that door." I sat there in the dark, listening. The building was silent now. Too silent. Then I heard it again. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavier this time. Closer. They stopped right outside my bedroom door. For a full minute, nothing, just the sound of my own breath, my own heartbeat. Then came the softest sound. Metal scraping against wood. They were trying to pry the lock. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't make a noise. The scraping stopped. Silence. And then, from the other side of the door, a low laugh. Quiet. Unsettling. Like whoever was out there thought this was funny. I squeezed my eyes shut and waited. A text from Mr. Phillips lit up my screen. "They're leaving. I hear sirens. Stay put until morning." I didn't dare move. I stayed there, crouched against the bed, gripping my phone, staring at the door. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, I heard it. Sirens. Distant at first, then louder. Red and blue lights flashed through the cracks around my blinds. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted. Footsteps pounded through the hallway. A loud knock on my apartment door. "Police! Is anyone inside?" I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Another knock. "This is Officer Ramirez. Your landlord called us. We need to confirm you're safe." I forced myself to stand. My legs were shaking so badly I almost fell. I moved the dresser away from the bedroom door and unlocked it. Then I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. 2 officers, uniforms, badges. I opened the door. "Ma'am, are you okay?" one of them asked. I nodded, but I wasn't. I wasn't okay at all. Officer Ramirez stepped inside, his partner right behind him. They both had their hands near their belts, alert and scanning the apartment. "Did anyone get inside?" he asked. "No," I whispered. "They tried. They were at my door, and my bedroom door, but they didn't get in." The second officer, a woman with her hair pulled back tight, spoke into her radio. "Suspect fled the scene, requesting backup for perimeter search." Mr. Phillips appeared in the hallway behind them, his face pale and drawn. He was holding his phone and a flashlight. "Terra," he said quietly. "I'm so sorry. I should have—" "You saved me," I interrupted. "You texted me. You called the police." He nodded, but he didn't look relieved. He looked guilty. Officer Ramirez turned to him. "Sir, you said you saw them on your security camera." "Yes. 2 men. They broke into the vacant unit on the first floor about 20 minutes ago. I saw them on the feed and called 911 immediately. But then they went upstairs. I heard them in the hallway." He looked at me. "That's when I texted you. I didn't want to shout and alert them that I'd seen them. I thought if you left quietly—" "She did the right thing staying put," Officer Ramirez said. "If she'd opened that door or tried to leave, they might have cornered her in the hallway." The female officer walked past me into the apartment, checking the windows, the bedroom, the bathroom. Everything's secure, she called out. Mr. Phillips rubbed his face. I should have done more. You did exactly right, Ramirez said. You called us the moment you saw them. Response time was 14 minutes. That's good for this area at 3 in the morning. 14 minutes. It had felt like hours. Where are they now? I asked. They ran into the woods when they heard the sirens, the female officer said. We've got units searching, but it's dark and heavily wooded. If they know the area, they could be anywhere. My chest tightened. So they're still out there? For now, Ramirez said. But we're going to search the building and the surrounding area. We'll also check the unit they broke into. You should pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. She can stay with me, Mr. Phillips offered. I have a pull-out couch. I shook my head. My sister's on her way. I'll go to her place. Ramirez nodded. Good. We'll have officers patrol this area for the rest of the night. If you see anything at all, you call 911 immediately. He handed me his card. And call me directly if you remember any other details. I took the card with numb fingers. The officers left to search the building. Mr. Phillips stayed with me while I packed a bag. I grabbed clothes, my laptop, Pepper's carrier, food, and her favorite toy. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the suitcase. Why me? I whispered. Why my apartment? Mr. Phillips sighed. You live alone. Your lights are on late. They probably thought you'd be an easy target. The words made me feel sick. When Naina arrived 20 minutes later, she hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. She looked at Mr. Phillips with so much gratitude I thought she might cry. Thank you, she said. Thank you for watching out for her. He nodded. I just wish I'd done more. As we walked to Naina's car, I looked back at the building. My home. The place I'd been so excited to move into. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place I'd barely escaped from. I stayed at Naina's apartment for the rest of that night and the next day. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice. Terra, open up. Every time I started to drift off, I jerked awake, heart racing, convinced someone was trying to break in. Naina made me tea, wrapped me in blankets, and let me talk in circles about everything that had happened. She didn't tell me I was overreacting. She didn't tell me it was over. She just listened. On Wednesday afternoon, Officer Ramirez called me. Miss Settles, we'd like you to come down to the station if you're able. We found some things during our search and we need you to confirm a few details. Naina drove me. The station was cold and sterile, smelling faintly of coffee and floor cleaner. Ramirez met us in a small conference room with a table covered in evidence bags. We searched the property this morning after daylight, he said. Here's what we found. He laid out the bags one by one. The first bag contained a black cell phone, cheap, prepaid. We found this near the tree line behind your building. We checked the messages. There's only one text sent from this phone. He pulled up a photo on his tablet and showed it to me. Don't look outside again. My stomach dropped. That's the message I got. Which means one of them had your number, Ramirez said. Do you know how they could have gotten it? I shook my head. I don't give my number out. Only close friends and family, and my landlord has it for emergencies. Ramirez nodded slowly. We're going to check with your landlord about where he keeps tenant information. The second bag contained a small camera. The lens was cracked, but it still worked. We found this in the woods about 30 feet from your building. When we turned it on, there was footage stored on the memory card. He pulled up another image on his tablet. It was grainy and dark, but I recognized it immediately. My living room, my couch, the soft glow of my lamp. I felt like I might throw up. They were filming you, Ramirez said quietly, from outside your window. This was recorded 2 nights ago. They were watching me, I whispered. Yes. The third bag contained a backpack. Inside were more items, wallets, phones, jewelry, small electronics. These are stolen, Ramirez explained. We're running them against recent burglary reports in the area. Looks like these two have been hitting multiple apartment complexes over the past month. So I wasn't the only one, I said. No, but you were the only one they texted directly. That's what concerns us. Naina grabbed my hand. What does that mean? It means they were watching her specifically, Ramirez said. They had her number. They knew her name. They knew which unit she lived in. This wasn't random. They were targeting her. The room felt smaller, colder. Have you found them? I asked. Ramirez shook his head. Not yet. But we have their prints from the vacant unit they broke into. And we have this evidence. If they surface anywhere, we'll get them. If. What do I do until then? I asked. Stay somewhere else for a few days. We'll keep patrolling your building, and we'll contact you the moment we have any updates. I nodded, but I felt hollow. They were still out there, somewhere, maybe watching someone else. Maybe still watching me. When we got back to Naina's apartment, I sat on her couch and stared at the wall. She made me food I didn't eat, played movies I didn't watch. Finally, she just sat next to me. You're safe here, she said softly. Am I? I whispered. They knew my name, Naina. They had my number. What if they know where you live, too? She didn't have an answer for that. By Thursday morning, Officer Ramirez called again. We think we know how they got your information, he said. Your landlord's office. The window lock was broken. Someone pried it open. We found tool marks on the frame. My heart sank. They broke into his office? Looks that way. Probably earlier this week. Your rental paperwork has your name, phone number, unit number, everything they'd need. So they hadn't just been watching. They'd been planning. Mr. Phillips feels terrible, Ramirez added. He's upgrading all his locks and installing motion sensor lights around the property. Is it safe for me to go back? There was a pause. We haven't found the suspects yet, but we've increased patrols. It's your call. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to stay at Naina's forever, never go back to that building, never feel that fear again. But another part of me, the stubborn part, didn't want to let them win. I'd worked hard for that apartment. I'd been excited to live on my own. I wasn't going to let two criminals steal that from me. I'll go back tomorrow, I told Naina. She looked at me like I was crazy. Terra! I can't hide forever, I said. And if the police are patrolling, I'll be okay. She didn't argue, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Friday morning, she drove me back to the apartment. The building looked the same, quiet, normal, like nothing had happened. Mr. Phillips was in the courtyard installing a new motion sensor light near the parking lot. When he saw me, he walked over immediately. Terra, he said, I'm so sorry about my office. I didn't realize they'd broken in until the police checked. It's not your fault, I said. It is. I should have had better locks, better security. You did everything right, I said. You saw them, you called the police, you warned me. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe it. I went inside and unpacked. The apartment felt different, smaller. The windows felt like eyes. I closed all the blinds and turned on every light. Pepper explored cautiously, sniffing every corner like she was checking for danger. The day passed slowly. I tried to work, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking at the door, kept listening for sounds. By evening, I felt more settled. The police had driven by twice. Mr. Phillips texted to check on me. Naina called 3 times. Maybe it really was over. Maybe the men had moved on. Maybe they were scared off by the police presence. I made myself dinner, watched a show, took a shower. Around 10 p.m., I got into bed with Pepper curled up next to me. For the first time in days, I felt like I might actually sleep. I set my phone on the nightstand, volume on high, just in case, and I closed my eyes. I woke up to screaming. Not my own, someone else's. Distant but panicked, coming from somewhere in the building. I sat up fast, heart already racing. Pepper was on her feet, ears back, hissing toward the door. Then I smelled it. Smoke. Faint at first, then stronger, acrid and choking. I grabbed my phone. 5:47 a.m. The fire alarm started blaring, loud, piercing, the kind of sound that makes your ears ring. I jumped out of bed and ran to the door. When I touched it, it wasn't hot. I opened it carefully and looked into the hallway. Smoke, thick and gray, rolling along the ceiling like a living thing. "Fire!" someone shouted from downstairs. "Everyone out! Now!" I slammed the door shut and ran back to the bedroom. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab Pepper's carrier. She fought me, hissing and clawing, but I finally got her inside and zipped it shut. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and ran for the door. The hallway was worse now. The smoke was lower, burning my eyes and throat. I could hear people running, shouting, doors slamming. I held the carrier close to my chest and ran toward the stairs. Other tenants were ahead of me, coughing, stumbling. An older man was helping a woman down the steps. A kid was crying. The smoke was thicker on the first floor. I could barely see. My lungs burned with every breath. And then I saw it. Flames. Coming from the vacant unit. The same one the men had broken into 3 nights ago. The fire was already crawling up the walls, spreading fast, too fast. I ran for the exit, burst through the door into the cool morning air. The courtyard was chaos. People in pajamas and bathrobes, some barefoot, all of them coughing and crying. Mr. Phillips was moving from person to person, counting heads, making sure everyone was out. When he saw me, relief flooded his face. "Terra, thank God." I couldn't speak. I just held Pepper's carrier and watched as flames started breaking through the windows of the first floor. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. And then I saw them, 2 figures at the edge of the tree line, just standing there, watching. I grabbed Mr. Phillips's arm. "There, in the trees." He turned, squinting. His face went pale. "Those are them," he said. "The men from the camera." Before I could respond, fire trucks screamed into the parking lot. Firefighters jumped out, pulling hoses, shouting orders. One of them ran over to us. Tall, broad shoulders. His gear was covered in soot, like he'd already been fighting fires all night. "Ma'am, I'm Captain Mitchell. Are you injured?" I shook my head, still staring at the trees. But the figures were gone now, vanished. "Captain," Mr. Phillips said urgently. "The 2 men who set this fire, they were just there, in the woods." Captain Mitchell turned sharply. "You saw them?" "Yes, 2 of them. They were watching the building burn." Captain Mitchell spoke into his radio immediately. "We need police backup. Possible arson suspects in the wooded area north of the building. 2 males, on foot." He turned back to me. "Are you sure you're okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the carrier. "Come sit down," he said gently, guiding me toward one of the fire trucks. I sat on the back bumper, Pepper meowing frantically inside her carrier. Mr. Phillips stood next to me, watching his building burn. Captain Mitchell crouched in front of me. "Can you tell me what happened, from the beginning?" And so I did. While the fire roared behind us and his crew sprayed water into the flames, I told him everything. The 3 a.m. text, the men at my door, the police search, the evidence they found, the camera, the burner phone, my phone number, the break-in at Mr. Phillips's office, and how I came back yesterday because I thought it was over. Captain Mitchell listened without interrupting. When I finished, he looked at Mr. Phillips. "You think they came back to destroy evidence?" he asked. Mr. Phillips nodded. "The vacant unit they broke into? That's where the fire started. The police found fingerprints in there, tool marks. If they burned it, they'd destroy all of that." Captain Mitchell stood and spoke into his radio again. "Arson investigation needed. Point of origin is first floor vacant unit. Suspects may still be on scene." Within minutes, police cars arrived. Officer Ramirez jumped out, his face grim. "They were here?" he asked Mr. Phillips. "We saw them. In the trees. watching. Ramirez swore under his breath. He turned to the other officers. Search the woods, now. They fanned out, flashlights cutting through the early morning darkness. I sat there, numb, watching the fire. Captain Mitchell's crew had knocked it down quickly, but the first floor was destroyed. Black. Smoking. Ruined. How bad is it? Mr. Phillips asked quietly. First floor is a total loss, Captain Mitchell said. Second and third floors have smoke and water damage. No one's living here for a while. Mr. Phillips's shoulders sagged. 20 years. He'd told me once he'd owned this building for 20 years, and now it was gone. A shout came from the woods. We've got them! Everyone turned. 2 officers emerged from the tree line, dragging 2 men in handcuffs. They were young, mid-20s. One of them was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. The other looked terrified. Officer Ramirez walked over to them, his face cold. You have the right to remain silent. But the one with the cut interrupted. We didn't mean for it to get this big. We just wanted to burn the evidence. We didn't think— Shut up, the other one hissed. But it was too late. He'd already confessed. Ramirez smiled grimly. Thanks for that. They loaded the men into separate patrol cars. As they drove away, I finally let myself breathe. They were caught. It was over. Captain Mitchell sat down next to me on the fire truck bumper. You okay? I nodded, even though I wasn't sure that was true. You're lucky, he said quietly. If your landlord hadn't warned you 3 nights ago, you might have been trapped in there when this fire started. I looked at Mr. Phillips. He was standing near the building, staring at the damage. He saved my life, I whispered. Captain Mitchell nodded. Yeah, he did. The sun was starting to rise now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It would have been beautiful if not for the smoke still curling from the building's broken windows. Paramedics checked everyone for smoke inhalation. Most of the tenants were okay, just shaken. An elderly woman on the 3rd floor needed oxygen, but she'd be fine. I sat there with Pepper's carrier on my lap, watching the organized chaos. Firefighters rolling up hoses, police taking statements. Mr. Phillips talking to his insurance company on the phone, his voice tired and defeated. Captain Mitchell came back over after checking on his crew. We found the accelerant, he said. Gasoline. They poured it through the broken window of the vacant unit and lit it. Crude but effective. Why would they come back? I asked. They got away. Why risk getting caught? Because they left evidence behind, he said. Fingerprints, DNA. They knew we'd tie them to other burglaries once we processed that unit. Burning it down was their way of erasing the connection. But it didn't work. No, because your landlord was watching, because you reported what happened, because we documented everything before they had the chance. He paused. Fire doesn't erase everything. Sometimes, it just makes the truth more obvious. Officer Ramirez walked over, looking exhausted but satisfied. Miss Settles, I wanted you to know, we've matched those 2 to 6 other break-ins in the area. The evidence we collected from the woods 3 days ago, that's going to put them away for a long time. What about the fire? I asked. Arson, attempted destruction of evidence. Add that to the burglary charges, the stalking, the threats. He shook his head. They're not getting out anytime soon. Something loosened in my chest. Relief. Real relief. They had your phone number on that burner phone, Ramirez continued. And we found more footage on the camera. Not just you, 3 other tenants. They were watching the whole building. Mr. Phillips walked over, his face gray with exhaustion. How many people were they watching? At least 6 that we can confirm, Ramirez said. Across 3 different buildings. You weren't the only landlord they hit. Mr. Phillips sat down heavily on the curb. I should have seen it sooner. You saw it in time, Captain Mitchell said firmly. Everyone got out. No one died. That's because you were paying attention. Mr. Phillips didn't respond. He just stared at his building. I set Pepper's carrier down and walked over to him. I sat next to him on the curb. "Thank you," I said quietly. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "For what? I let your home burn down." "No, you kept me alive." I took a shaky breath. "That text you sent at 3 a.m? I almost ignored it. I almost went back to sleep. But you kept texting. You kept trying. And when they came to my door, you'd already called the police." "I should have done more." "You did everything," I said. "You saw them on your camera and you called 911 first. That's what Officer Ramirez told me. You called 911 before you even texted me. You did everything right." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I've been managing properties for 25 years, he said. "I've dealt with bad tenants, broken pipes, electrical fires, but I've never had someone actively trying to hurt my people." He looked at me. "You're not just a tenant, Terra. You're someone I'm responsible for, and when I saw them on that camera heading toward your floor," his voice cracked, "I couldn't let anything happen to you." I felt tears sliding down my face. "You saved me. Twice." He put a hand on my shoulder. "And I'd do it again." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe it. I went inside and unpacked. The apartment felt different, smaller. The windows felt like eyes. I closed all the blinds and turned on every light. Pepper explored cautiously, sniffing every corner like she was checking for danger. The day passed slowly. I tried to work, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking at the door, kept listening for sounds. By evening, I felt more settled. The police had driven by twice. Mr. Phillips texted to check on me. Nana called 3 times. Maybe it really was over. Maybe the men had moved on. Maybe they were scared off by the police presence. I made myself dinner, watched a show, took a shower. Around 10 p.m., I got into bed with Pepper curled up next to me. For the first time in days, I felt like I might actually sleep. I set my phone on the nightstand, volume on high just in case, and I closed my eyes. The Red Cross showed up around 7 a.m. with blankets and coffee. They helped all the displaced tenants find temporary housing. Most of us went to stay with family. A few went to hotels. I went back to Nana's place. This time, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was regrouping. Over the next few days, the full story came together. The 2 men were brothers, Dylan and Marcus Hewitt. Both had prior arrests for burglary. They'd been hitting apartment complexes across 3 counties, looking for units with single occupants who kept odd hours. Easy targets. They'd been watching Mr. Phillips's building for 2 weeks before they made their move. They'd broken into his office, stolen tenant information, and used it to identify which units were occupied by people living alone. I was one of 5 people they'd been actively targeting. The camera they'd been using had footage going back 10 days. Hours of video. Me working at my kitchen table. Me watching TV. Me getting ready for bed. It made my skin crawl. But it also made me angry. They'd violated not just my space, but my sense of safety. They'd made me feel hunted in my own home. But they'd failed. Because Mr. Phillips had seen them. Because he'd acted. Because he'd trusted his gut when something felt wrong. The fire investigation confirmed what Captain Mitchell suspected. The brothers had returned to the building around 5:30 a.m., thinking everyone would be asleep. They'd poured gasoline through the broken window of the vacant unit and lit it, hoping to destroy the forensic evidence the police had documented. But the fire spread faster than they expected. Old building, dry wood, poor ventilation. By the time they realized how big it had gotten, the fire alarms were going off and people were evacuating. They'd stayed in the woods to watch, probably to make sure the evidence burned completely. That's when Mr. Phillips and I saw them. And that's when they got caught. The arson charge added 10 years to their sentence. Combined with the burglary charges, the stalking, the threats, they were looking at 25 to 30 years each. I testified at their preliminary hearing. It was hard, seeing them in person, hearing their voices. But I did it, because they needed to know they didn't win. Mr. Phillips testified too. He brought security camera footage, tenant records, photos of his broken office window. He was calm and methodical, laying out exactly what they'd done. When it was over, the judge denied bail. They weren't getting out. 3 months later, I found a new apartment. It was smaller than the old one, but it was in a newer building with electronic locks and security cameras in every hallway. The landlord was a young woman who lived on site and took safety seriously. I still thought about that night sometimes. The 3 a.m. text, the whisper outside my door, the smell of smoke and the sight of flames breaking through windows. But I also thought about Mr. Phillips, how he'd watched over his tenants like they were family, how he'd acted without hesitation when he saw danger. The last time I saw him was at a coffee shop near his new apartment. His building had been condemned, too damaged to repair. Insurance covered most of it, but he'd decided not to rebuild. Instead, he sold the property and retired. "I'm too old for this," he said with a tired smile. "Time to let someone else deal with broken toilets and late rent checks." "You were a good landlord," I said. "The best." He shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," I said firmly. "Most people wouldn't have been watching. Most people wouldn't have texted me at 3 a.m. Most people wouldn't have stayed up all night making sure their tenants were safe." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know what the worst part was?" "What?" "Thinking I might have been too late. When I saw them on that camera heading upstairs and I couldn't get through to you on the phone," he swallowed hard. "I thought I'd failed." "You didn't," I said. "You saved my life." He smiled, but it was sad. "I'm glad you're okay, Terra. I'm glad you found a safe place." "I did. Because of you." We finished our coffee and said goodbye. As I walked to my car, I turned back one more time. He was standing on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching me go. And I realized that's what he'd always been doing. Watching. Protecting. Making sure we were okay. Some people are just built that way. I said. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe it. I went inside and unpacked. The apartment felt different, smaller. The windows felt like eyes. I closed all the blinds and turned on every light. Pepper explored cautiously, sniffing every corner like she was checking for danger. The day passed slowly. I tried to work, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking at the door, kept listening for sounds. By evening, I felt more settled. The police had driven by twice. Mr. Phillips texted to check on me. Nana called 3 times. Maybe it really was over. Maybe the men had moved on. Maybe they were scared off by the police presence. I made myself dinner, watched a show, took a shower. Around 10 p.m., I got into bed with Pepper curled up next to me. For the first time in days, I felt like I might actually sleep. I set my phone on the nightstand, volume on high just in case, and I closed my eyes.
That was Terra Settles. I'm Captain Dean Mitchell, Station 47. We got the call at 5:47 a.m., structure fire, multiple residents, possible entrapment. When we pulled up, the first floor was fully involved. Flames were coming through the windows, smoke so thick you couldn't see the courtyard. Terra was sitting on the lawn in her pajamas, holding a cat carrier, shaking like she'd just survived a war. In a way, she had. While my crew knocked down the fire, she told me everything. The 3 a.m. warning from her landlord, the men who'd been stalking her, the break-in attempt, how her landlord had seen them on his security camera and called 911 immediately, then texted her to leave because he knew they were dangerous, and how those same men came back 3 days later to burn down the evidence of their crimes. Here's what we found when we investigated the point of origin. Gasoline poured through a first-floor window, deliberate ignition, classic arson to destroy a crime scene. The men thought fire would erase their fingerprints, their DNA, all the evidence the police had documented. But fire doesn't work like that. It doesn't erase truth. Sometimes it exposes it. Those two men were arrested at the scene. They'd stayed in the woods to watch the building burn, and that's exactly where police found them. The evidence they tried to destroy, it survived in police custody. Every fingerprint, every piece of footage, every stolen item. They're serving 28 years each now. Terra's building was condemned. Total loss. But everyone got out alive, 0 casualties. And that's because one man, her landlord, Mr. Phillips, was paying attention. He saw something wrong, and he acted immediately. He called 911 first, then warned his tenant, then stayed up all night making sure everyone was safe. I've been fighting fires for 18 years. I've seen what happens when people ignore their instincts, when they dismiss that feeling that something's wrong, when they wait too long to act. And I've seen what happens when people trust their gut, when they make the hard call at 3 a.m., even if it seems crazy, when they stay vigilant, even when everyone else has gone to sleep. That's the difference between tragedy and survival. If someone you trust tells you to leave, even if you don't understand why, even if it's the middle of the night, listen to them. Hesitation costs lives. Action saves them. Terra's alive today because her landlord didn't hesitate, because he saw danger and sounded the alarm, because he chose vigilance over convenience. Fire doesn't just destroy buildings. Sometimes it destroys the lies people hide behind, and sometimes when the smoke clears, the truth is the only thing left standing. I'm Captain Dean Mitchell, Station 47. Stay safe out there.